I have divided the chapter into two parts. Part 1 is from page number 17 to 20, and part 2 is from page number 20 to 23. This I have done for quick revision and easy understanding. So let's get started. Now, Nelson Mandela became South Africa's first black president after more than 3 centuries of white rule. Mr. Mandela's African National Congress Party won 252 of the 400 seats in the first democratic elections of South Africa's history. Now, this is the background. In this background, we will be revising the chapter. Now, we all know who Nelson Mandela was. So, this chapter, it is an extract from his autobiography. लॉन्ग वॉक टू फ्रीडम. अब अगर हमें नेल्सन मंडेला की ज़िंदगी के बारे में थोड़ा सा भी पता है सो वी कैन रिलेट टू द चैप्टर. चैप्टर जो है इट डिस्क्राइब्स द ओथ टेकिंग सेरेमनी एंड इट्स सिग्निफिकेंस. सो डेमोक्रेटिक गवर्नमेंट जो है वो चुनी गई. सो व्हेन मंडेला इज टेकिंग ओथ ऑब्वियसली ही रिमेंबर्स द पास्ट, ही रिमेंबर्स ऑल द हॉरिबल अट्रॉसिटीज एंड ऑपरेशंस ऑफ द वाइट्स because of the policy of apartheid. जो भी discrimination black skinned लोगों के against हो रही थी, so he remembers that. So while he is describing, while he is taking the oath, he is overwhelmed with the past. So his overwhelming emotions once democratic rule is adopted in South Africa. So his emotions they come out, he shares his feelings and he thanks everyone present there, the international guests. He presents the presence of the international guests who are there to support him. So he thanks everyone. Then he talks about the past, the sacrifices of his people because of which they attained that democracy at that time. So then he goes back into his childhood. He remembers that how he thought that he was free, but actually he was not free. So he talks about all those things. I have divided the chapter into short headings so that you are able to understand it quickly. So the first one is the red letter day. So red letter day is the day of the oath taking ceremony. So 10th May dawned bright and clear. Mandela was being visited by many dignitaries and world leaders who were coming to congratulate him and show their support for the newly formed democratic government. So newly formed democratic government hai, ceremony ho rahi hai, and the world leaders they are present there to show their support and solidarity to Mandela. He calls it a lovely autumn day. Now, why he calls it a lovely autumn day, whether it was just because season of autumn and he calls it is just a way of saying it or it has some significance. So this is a question in your book. So let's discuss it. Can you say how 10th May is an autumn day in South Africa? Textual question, page number 17. So the season autumn, it coincides with falling of old leaves from trees which then become ready for the new one. So autumn season हमें पता है पतझड़ का season है. So falling of old leaves from the trees and these old leaves then they give way to the new one. So similarly, the 10th day of May, it was called an autumn day by Mandela because it witnessed the fall of the oppressive forces. The oppressive forces here were the rule of the whites. And it marked the beginning of a new era with a democratic, non-racial government coming into power. So that is why Autumn Day. So he calls it an Autumn Day because the oppressive forces, the rule of the whites, it was over and a new beginning was now in front of them. Now page number 16 and 17. I've written the page numbers here so that you can keep your book in front and you can see and you can mark the lines in your book, the lines that are important. Now the ceremonies they took place in the lovely sandstone amphitheatre formed by the Union buildings in Pretoria. So you can underline this, you need to remember where the ceremony was held. Now, for decades, this had been the seat of white supremacy, and now it was the site of a rainbow gathering of different colors. So, you can underline this phrase rainbow gathering of different colors and nations for the installation of South Africa's first democratic non racial government. It was attended by politicians and dignitaries from more than 140 countries around the world. So, I'll be explaining this expression a little later. So now everyone has reached there, almost dignitaries from 140 countries to show their support. So jubilant scenes on the streets of Pretoria followed the ceremony with blacks, whites and coloreds celebrating together. So everyone together was celebrating. More than 1 lakh South African men, women and children of all races, they sang and danced with joy. Now this is the amphitheater. So you can see the stairs like in the cinema hall and Mandela taking the oath. Now, the meaning of the expression rainbow gathering of different colors and nations. It means a gathering of people from different nations and belonging to different caste, race, creed, and color. So that is why a rainbow gathering of different colors and nations. Then the meaning of the expression being the seat of white supremacy. So this amphitheater, this it actually had been a seat of white supremacy. Till the establishment of democratic government in South Africa, the sandstone amphitheater had been used by the whites as a place to rule, dictate, and make harsh and inhuman policies against the blacks to suppress them. So, before the democratic government was elected, this was the seat of white supremacy because from here rules against the blacks they were made. So that is why the expression being the seat of white supremacy. Now, oath taking ceremony. So, when he was taking oath, what did and how did Mandela address his people? Now, Mandela was accompanied by his daughter Zinani. First, Mr. De Klerk was sworn in as the second deputy president, and then Thabo Mbeki was sworn in as the first deputy president. When it was Mandela's turn, he pledged to obey and uphold the constitution and to devote himself to the well being of the republic and its people. So, this can come as a question: what did Mandela pledge during his oath taking ceremony? So, you have to write that he pledged to obey and uphold the constitution and to devote himself to the well being of the republic and its people. So, you have to memorize this. Then, after that, he started his address. Now, what he said at that time. So Nelson Mandela rejoiced the newborn liberty and thanked all the distinguished international guests who had reached there to show their support for the people of South Africa. So the first thing is always you have to thank everyone who is present. Then he talked about the rule of apartheid. Then as I said, कि because discrimination बहुत थी against black skinned people. So he talked about that in his speech. So he talked about the rule of apartheid in South Africa that lasted too long and he called it as an extraordinary human disaster. This is very important. So it means this the lines in red, they are the meaning of this. So, as the people, they were oppressed and racially discriminated because of the policy of apartheid. It was a violation of human rights and took too long to be redressed politically and socially. That is why he called it as an extraordinary human disaster. So, he called it as an extraordinary human disaster because under this policy of apartheid, people they were oppressed, they were racially discriminated, they were not given any rights. So it was a violation of human rights and it took too long to be redressed. Redressed here means too long to be abolished politically as well as socially. So therefore he called it as an extraordinary human disaster because nothing like that was seen anywhere else. Now, after the abolition of apartheid, he wished for a society on which all humanity will be proud of. So, in his speech, he is saying that now that policy had been abolished, we will establish a society on which whole of the world, whole humanity will be proud of. So now this is again an important question. Why he says that all humanity will be proud on such a society? Now according to Mandela, all humanity would be proud of it because this new society was a result of the victory of right over wrong. So it was result of victory of right over wrong. The new society had come into being after the sacrifices of many great people who gave their lives for upholding the basic rights of their people. So on before achieving this democracy, many people had lost their lives, many sacrifices, many people they stood against the rule of apartheid, but they were crushed. So the long and dark era of the practice of apartheid had come to an end, and this achievement was a unique one, something to be celebrated and proud of. So therefore the establishment of this society, it was a unique society because this society had overcome the rule, a rule that had taken many, many, many years. So that is why it was something to be celebrated and something to be proud of. So again, this is an important question. You need to learn it like this. Now, next one, he felt privileged to be host to the nations of the world and felt happy to be accepted as a nation. So again, he thanks everyone that all the world leaders have accepted them as a free nation, the citizens of which were considered outlaws before. So he is thanking everyone that they have accepted the people of South Africa because before that they were considered as outlaws. Now, what this means, outlaws, I'll be again discussing it in the next slide. Then he regarded the change and freedom achieved as a common victory for justice, for peace, and for human dignity. Again, this comes as a question I've explained in the next slide. He said that they had at last achieved political emancipation. So, what is the meaning of political emancipation? Freedom from restriction, all kinds of restriction. He pledged to liberate all the people from continuing bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering, gender discrimination, and other types of discrimination. So, during his speech, again, he is pledging that what as a leader he will do. So, जब भी कोई जीतता है, कोई लीडर, कोई नेता, so in his first speech he promises, he pledges that this is this what he is going to do. So that is what Mandela is also speaking in his first address to his people. So he pledges to liberate all the people from the continuing bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering, gender discrimination, because all this was prevalent in South Africa under the policy of apartheid. तो वो ये सारी बातें कहता है कि ये सारी चीजें जो अब से खत्म हो जाएंगी. So any other type of discrimination if it is prevalent there. Now, he promised then. So this is what he pledged, and then he also gives a promise that never ever again the beautiful land of Africa would experience the oppression of one by another. So after pledging that what he will do, he promises कि ऐसा दिन apartheid जैसी discrimination अब जिंदगी में आगे दोबारा कभी नहीं आएगी. I promise that. So never ever again the beautiful land of Africa would experience the oppression of one by another. Now, if this pledged question comes, that what did Mandela pledge? So you have to write this also, this line also, because in the beginning he pledged to obey and uphold the constitution and to devote himself to the well-being of the republic and its people. So along with this, you have to write all these things. So this is what he pledges. Then he says, the sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement. So explain this, what he means by this. Now, as I said previously, he promises to his people कि ऐसा era, ऐसा bondage का era दोबारा नहीं आएगा. So this is in continuation of that. He says कि sun जो है अब हमारे country के ऊपर कभी भी set नहीं होगा, मतलब वो darkness दोबारा नहीं आएगी. It will always shine. So Mandela wished that the sun would never set on the glorious human achievement that South Africa has achieved after years of oppression. So years of oppression के बाद जो achieve हुआ है, अब उसके ऊपर दोबारा darkness नहीं आएगी. So after years of oppression, struggle and sacrifices, it would never see the darkness of bondage again. A democratic, non-racial government in South Africa is a glorious achievement. So glorious achievement is actually the establishment of a democratic and non-racial government in South Africa. Now, the meaning of this expression, why were the blacks considered outlaws? The black skinned people of South Africa, they were considered outlaws because of the practice of the policy of apartheid. So they were not treated as citizens, rather they were treated in an inhuman way. So they were not actually considered citizens, therefore they were treated as outlaws. So because of the policy of apartheid, no rights were given to them. Then another important question is this one. Why did Mandela call the swearing in ceremony as a common victory for justice, for peace, and for human dignity? So every nation should uphold human rights, promote equality, peace, and harmony among its citizens. Now, this is the first condition that a government of a country should give to its people: harmony, upholding of human rights, equality, and peace. But in South Africa, this was not happening under the rule of apartheid. So the practice of apartheid by the whites in South Africa violated all this. So this had many eyebrows raised among the world leaders who opposed this discriminatory policy. So all over the world, the leaders of the world, they knew that this thing, it is going on in South Africa, and they opposed it. Thus, when the abolition of this policy happened in South Africa, it was a common victory for everyone all over the world. So, common victory for justice, for peace, and for human dignity. The newly formed democratic government of a free nation received international recognition and acceptance. So after this abolition, the newly formed government, it got the support of everyone throughout the world. So therefore it was a common victory for justice, for peace, and human dignity in the world. Now next, events during the ceremony. अब ceremony के दौरान कौन कौन सी celebrations हुई? So it marked, the ceremony was marked by the spectacular array of South African jets, helicopters and troop carriers that rode in perfect formation over the Union building. So ये page number 19 में है, so you can uh, underline this. This is again an important thing. So for Mandela, this spectacular array of South African jets and helicopters, it was a demonstration of the military's loyalty to democracy, to a new government that had been freely and fairly elected. So, what actually was the significance of this celebration? The spectacular array of South African jets. It was actually showing military's loyalty towards him, towards the president of the nation. So the highest generals of the South African Defence Force and police, their chests bedecked with ribbons and medals from days gone by, saluted Mandela and pledged their loyalty. So even the highest generals of the army, of the defense, and the police, their chests bedecked. Bedecked means decorated, decorated with medals and ribbons that they had received in the past because of their courage or bravery they have received in the past. So even those journals, they saluted Mandela and they pledged their loyalty towards him. Now, he says that he was well aware of the fact that the same generals and police would have arrested him if he was to come in front of them many years before. So, Mandela here says that he was not unmindful. Unmindful here means that he was aware of this fact. So, he says that the same generals and the police, the highest generals, they would have arrested him if democracy had not been achieved in South Africa because he had been a rebel. He had opposed all those laws. So if democracy had not been achieved, so these generals, these police, they would have arrested him. But now that day, since he had been chosen as the president of a democracy, they all saluted him and pledged their loyalty for their president and the nation. Now, on that day, another unique thing happened. Two anthems were sung. Now, the day was symbolic of demolishing the wall of discrimination on the basis of race and color. It meant equal rights for everyone, whether white or black. Thus, saluting and rejoicing the newly gained freedom and democracy, two national anthems were sung, one by the whites and the other by the blacks. Now, इससे पहले apartheid की पॉलिसी के ड्यूरिंग वाइट्स दे वर सेपरेट एंड ब्लैक्स दे वर सेपरेट. सो वाइट्स जो है उनका एक अपना एंथम था और जो ब्लैक्स थे उनका एक अपना एंथम था. बट नाउ दैट वॉल इट हैज बीन डिमोलिश्ड. सो उस दिन दोनों इकट्ठे साथ आते हैं और दो नेशनल एंथम्स जो है वो गाए जाते हैं, वन बाय द वाइट्स एंड वन बाय द blacks, to show that now they are all together. So although that day neither the whites nor the blacks knew the lyrics of the anthem of the other, because till then they had hated each other, but Mandela was hopeful that soon they would know the words by heart. So उस दिन तक obviously दोनों एक दूसरे के एंथम को हेट करते थे. सो दे हैव नेवर न्यू द एंथम ऑफ द अदर. पर उस दिन दोनों ने अपना अपना एंथम वो गाया. एंड मंडेला ही वॉज होपफुल कि अब आगे से ये जो दोनों एंथम है वो सबको बाय हार्ट याद हो जाएंगे. सो इट एक्चुअली मेंट दैट एवरीवन इज गोइंग टू कम क्लोजर फ्रॉम दैट डे ऑनवर्ड्स. सो दैट इज द सिग्निफिकेंस ऑफ सिंगिंग ऑफ टू एंथम्स ऑन this oath taking day. Now, why was Mandela overwhelmed with a sense of history? So, when Mandela is giving his speech now, the history, the past happenings, they come to his mind and he becomes overwhelmed. So he talks about the first decade of the 20th century. The first decade of 20th century ka usme, after the Anglo-Boer War, this apartheid policy it was adopted. So the white-skinned people, of South Africa, they patched up their differences, maybe with the whites from England, and they erected a system of racial domination against the dark-skinned peoples of their own country. So the whites in South Africa who were living in South Africa, they shook hands with the whites of England, and a wall was erected between the whites and the dark-skinned peoples of South Africa. So maybe the whites in South Africa, they must have felt that it is better to be with the mighty, otherwise they would also suffer, because in the Anglo-Boer Wars, the Britishers, they won. Now, the structure they created formed the basis of one of the harshest and most inhumane societies of the world has ever known. So, that structure was called apartheid. Then, coming to the present times, he says that now, in the last decade of the 20th century, that structure, that policy, that apartheid, it had been overturned forever. So, in the beginning of the 20th century, it started, and in the last decade of the 20th century, it was abolished forever. So it has been replaced by one that recognized the rights and freedoms of all peoples regardless of their color of their skin. So now it was replaced by a democratic government that recognized the rights and the freedoms of all the peoples, whether they are black or white, whether they belong to some caste or creed or color, so whatever. So it was same for everyone. Law was same for everyone after that. Now remembering the sacrifices. So after that, he remembers all the people who had laid their lives to achieve this. So Mandela, he remembers with reverence and thus the sacrifices of his people who had laid their lives before him for the sake of the rights and freedom. So he said that their unimaginable sacrifices can never be counted or repaid. He added that as he had felt it on so many other days before this, he felt the same on that day too. So he says that जैसा कि उसे आगे भी लगता रहा है इन लोगों के बारे में these brave people, so उस दिन भी उन्हें वो उसी तरह याद कर रहा था. So he felt as if he was simply the sum of all those African patriots who had gone before me. So he says कि उसे लगता है कि वो उन सारे patriots, all those African patriots who fought against this policy of apartheid, वो उनका एक essence है उसमें. So he says that long and noble line ended and now began again with me. So he says that although that long and noble line had ended, it means that all those people, they are not present today, but still he says that their aim, their purpose, it has now again begun with him. He will carry forward their aim and their purpose. So he means that all those great patriots before him who had courageously fought and sacrificed their lives for the struggle of freedom and liberation from the inhuman treatment rendered upon them, making them outcasts in their own country. So he feels that as if he owes a lot to them and that he was the essence, the sum of their bravery and loyalty towards the nation. Though they are no more, so he says that I am carrying forward their purpose, the struggle against poverty, discrimination, and suffering. So he was going to fight. He was going to now resolve all these things in the new formed nation. Then he says that I was pained that I was not able to thank them and that they were not able to see what their sacrifices had wrought. Again, this is an important expression on page number 20. So he feels sad as he was not able to express his gratitude to them for their unimaginable sacrifices and indomitable courage because of which they have achieved liberation. So he feels sad that personally was not able to thank them. He feels sad that they were not able to witness what their bravery had yielded. So he says that he is also sad that those brave people, they are not living today to see that the nation has achieved for what they had given their lives. So जिस चीज के लिए उन्होंने अपनी जान दी, so they are not present to see that it has been achieved. So he feels that freedom of today, it was the sum of all the bold steps and revolutionary struggles of the past. So he says कि ये किसी एक की जीत नहीं है. It is the sum total of all the events, of all the sacrifices, and of all the people who stood against that policy of apartheid. Now that's all for today. You can check the playlist to save time and you can select anything to revise out of the syllabus of class 10th. Now this is part 1 of the chapter that I've explained. After, in the next video now, I'll be explaining the rest of the chapter and then a worksheet of important questions. So bye for now and happy preparation.